Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Bosch Legacy. A great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. If I can't remember how long it's been since the series finale of Bosch. I remember reading up about it when the original series ended. I want to say it's just picking up like 6 months to maybe a year later. I don't know if that's something they've changed subsequently. I think I remember reading that. Once again, it's been a while. But obviously picking up with everybody's circumstances, Bosch doing his thing as a private investigator. Obviously, he's not doing the, putting away serial killers, He misses that aspect of the job, but he doesn't miss the bureaucracy behind everything else associated with it. But he still does keep working certain murder cases, and that's the three that he can't let go because, once again, everybody counts or no one counts. So those are the three he can never let go during his job, and he still hasn't let them go either. As he says, still chasing ghosts. So you have his circumstances, you have Maddie, as she's kind of dealing with the whole, being a boot and everything. I love that whole sequence at the beginning. It's still just so wild to see Maddie under these circumstances. It's just, I never would have saw that character's trajectory to go where it is. But it makes me wonder, would she have always gone down this path if Eleanor was still in her life? I think it's a combination of so many different things throughout her life that have led to this moment. Probably her dad being who her dad is, her mom's death, everything with Chandler last season, with the whole Carl Rogers situation. So all those domino effects led to this decision. So it just makes you wonder, it never the path. Even with her father being a cop, I still would have never seen this path trajectory for her. So that's what I find so fascinating. So I think. What really surprises me, and I thought was an interesting thing, dialogue-wise, how different, Maddie's, Maddie still kind of has, that grit and kind of, sass with, the way she does. That hasn't changed, but, her dialogue is written in a definitely different way. She curses a lot more than she did, because it's just, she's like, oh, at one point she's saying, oh, fucking A, and she's, pissed at O'Neill because he calls her out, because he's like, oh, I'm gonna write you up, because you're not supposed to leave your partner's side. Plus, he is also saying he was writing her up because she was like, oh, it's bullshit because you're mad because I caught my suspect, you did. And he's like, no, this is mine. Your suspect got away. I was like, what kind of BS is that? I guess it's the hierarchy. It's I was like, man, Boots really get treated, especially, man, y'all get treated like garbage. Because we never followed any Boots necessarily in the original series, not to my recollection. Do correct me in the comments down below if that's the case. So I just thought that was kind of fascinating, but also it's not just her, Chandler's dialogue is written that way too, because just because they're both mad, but it's you never really heard them talk like that, and Chandler's saying right, because Bosch had talked to her about, right, I can't believe you're still living in this house, they try to kill you in here. It's just people try to kill you in your home. He's like, yeah, I was shot at. You were literally shot in your home. She's like, there's no fucking way these motherfuckers are gonna kick me out of my house. Fuck them. And calls him cocksucker. Yo, you've never heard her talk like that. Because she's always been someone that's had a mild, God, what would be the word? She's always been kind of even killed her, and I think it's always been it's always a part of the job. But I mean, this is a little bit different because this is someone who came after you. Not only you, came after Maddie, killed other people too, 4 other people. So of course it's going to rub you the wrong way. And I like that the Carl thing isn't something that's immediately resolved. That is still something that Bosch and Chandler and Maddie still have to deal with. And I think that's going to be a recurring thing. It's definitely going to be a recurring storyline throughout the background. And I think that's so fascinating because it seems like all these stories, because it doesn't seem like we have the extended cast that deal with their respective backstories. So these 3 central characters, a lot of the season stories revolve around their story. So there's no at least so far in the show, I've only seen the series premiere. I've not watched the other 3 episodes that are out yet. So the fact is that I think that's going to be an interesting structure to this season in that regard. I think we're still going to have this like very Bosch style. And I've never actually talked about this before. I've never read the book. Oh, I've talked about the fact that I've never read the books, but I'm curious, are the books structured that way too, where like an entire book is dedicated to one case or not? Or is it like multiple cases, or is it structured very similarly to the show where it's like, right, there's smaller cases, but there's like one overarching case and stuff like that. But I just think that's fascinating. I hope I'm getting that across right, but like I said, I think that structure is interesting, that like every like major story, even what might be considered a side story, so far I don't know if anything would be considered a side story, because like Bosch ends up getting brought in by a tech billionaire named, was it Whitney Vance, which I've seen that actor in so many different things. I want to say like 24 is one of the shows I associate him with. I feel like there's something more recent I've seen him in, but he was in love with someone back in the day when he was in college, but she was Mexican. His dad wasn't all about that, so they ended up breaking up, but she was pregnant, and he never got in touch with her. I would have thought, I guess maybe he never was able to track her down, and maybe he never felt like the need to track her down, because it's like, right, I cut off things with you, because he's never seen her since like 1952 was like the last time they saw each other. So he wants to know if it's, she's still alive, if his child's still alive, because to his knowledge, I have no heir. And I thought was really interesting the line that he told Harry that, hey, make sure you keep this to yourself, because if other people found out, there's so many people, there's billions at stake, and a lot of people get in your way. It's like, right, if it ends up being found out that he has a legitimate heir, everything goes to that child by birthright. But there's probably so many people invest in what he does that if there's no, I'm curious, like, I'm sure there's like legality of like how that would be dispersed amongst other people. So that's his reasoning for like, right, don't tell anyone else. Obviously, the suspicious people immediately are like kind of like his head of security, I think, is that guy Sloan, and Ida, his personal secretary, which I'm like, hey, God, I'm blanking on her character's name, but most recently probably seen her stuff from time to time, but most recently I'd say Charmed is the most recent thing I've seen her in. I want to say like she popped up last season. So what was her character's name? It's been a while. Like Celeste. To me, they immediately seem like the most suspicious people just because of that. Because they're the people closest to him, and even then he doesn't want them to know about what he's investigating, so that's definitely going to be interesting. It is sad that what Harry ends up discovering about her, though, like a year after like the last time he saw her, it was she killed herself. But I think it was more specifically like 8 months after her and the last time her and Vance had seen each other, she had killed herself. So it's still enough of a time frame that the baby might still be alive. Which, really quickly, I appreciate the fact is Harry used his retired badge, covering it up to still get info. You know, Harry's always been someone who slides in that area of gray. Obviously, never going too far crossing that line, but he always dabbles in that shades of gray. But so I thought that was kind of an interesting way he got that information. Might as well take advantage of it. Because it wasn't anything that needed to officially. It's not like he gave his badge number. It's just kind of like, right, I'm a detective. I need this information. So it's nothing too much of an issue that, it'd be, well, an issue, But finding out she killed herself too, and Harry's like, I will still investigate this. Which Vance is like, oh, you're going to try and take me for a ride? Because that was like, Ida and Sloan, they were like worried, like, oh, anyone that's going to try and like steal from him. But he's like, no, you gave me the $10,000 just to have the conversation. That's compensation enough. I want to keep investigating this. And for him, he's like he doesn't understand why Bosch would do that. And Harry's just like doesn't give him an answer. It's just like, let me keep looking into this, because I guess as a father himself, I guess that it's because this is someone who still counts, who might kind of slip through the system, potentially have every right to know if you have a child out there, especially knowing that Vance is like, I don't have much more time. And the fact is, he said that made me go, he's going to die before he gets an answer, isn't he? And it seems like it, from what we see, it seems like he's dead at the end of the episode, sadly. And now it's going to be a situation of Harry's going to be investigating this by himself. He's going to have to try and keep it from Ida and Sloan that he's doing this. they could still probably, like, other people could still slyly find out what he's up to. I mean, it already seems like it because Harry notices twice throughout the episode that he notices that he's being followed potentially by the same vehicle too. So someone knows what's what and they're following him. I mean, that could be related to something else. I don't think it's a Carl Rogers stuff because by that time he hadn't gotten released, jumping around a little bit. So I would assume it has to deal with Vance's like case, but nevertheless. Also, Harry has to deal with the fact that there was an earthquake, and now his house is kind of like, right, until like stuff gets fixed or rebuilt, he can't, because apparently like one of his neighbors complained. He's like, wait, she complained? He's like, yeah, what do you expect? He lives on like a hill, and if his house comes crashing down, which immediately my mind thinks of like GTA 5, God, I'm blanking on the mission. The only reason why, like, I've watched speedruns of stuff, and that's the only reason why, like, that's in my head right now. Because it's been so long since I played GTA 5 story that, like, that doesn't even register in my... I probably wouldn't have remembered it otherwise. But there's, like, right, there's that mission where, like, Michael and Franken, like, tear down that dude's... the training instructors... what Michael believed to be his house after, like, him and Amanda were having an affair. Yada, 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 right? So it just reminded me... It's like, yeah, that whole thing, and if you live down from where Harry lives, of course you're going to be worried, so... I love that the guy who was leaving was like, don't rip off the sticker. What does Harry do? 30 seconds the guy's not even out of view, Harry just rips it off. I'm like, you're such a dick, Harry. It's like, yeah, it's my house, and he has to live somewhere else until they fix the whole place up. But he's like, even he's not taking it as too much concern, but it's like, there's a lot of foundational damage. So, I'm curious to see if he's going to be able to keep that house or not. Probably not. It's going to be interesting if, like, right, he's been living in that house for... I don't know if they've ever specified how long, but even he's living in that house the entirety of the original series, so it'd be funny and actually kind of effed up if he's not able to move back in, if they end up having to tear down that house, or just things go wrong in it, whatever the case may be. I think it'd be super jacked up in the first season of the new series, and he can no longer live in that house. I think that'd be just kind of like, there's just irony behind that in some capacity. So there's that angle to it. So there's also, circling to the Maddie situation, she's kind of got an uphill battle herself because, right, she's a legacy. The fact is that she is Bosch's kid, that's gonna, it's like, right, no matter who your dad is, like, but people pointing that out, like, that's also, like, I'm not trying to get by my dad's name alone, I'm trying to get by my own merit, because that's who Maddie is, like, she's that type of person, she's a hard worker, so of course but she's still got to prove herself even more so because of who her dad is, because people are just gonna assume, hey, you got here because of your dad, and they're gonna make her constantly make note of, like, no matter who your dad is, you're not going to get any special treatment. It's like, I get it. You don't have to make an announcement, but it's the whole point to let anyone else know, like, what's what. And so they make a public example of her because she left her partner behind, which I love. Harry's like, hey, you typically have a perfect record, but he's like, right, if you had a perfect record, I'd be worried, I wouldn't trust anyone that had a perfect record. And it's like, did he ever get in trouble as a boot? He's like, all the time, like, they call me out for, like, a disdain for authority and disobedience and stuff, and she's like, right, they completely got that wrong. And Bosch is like, right. I love that little bit between him and her. But she got a new TO who is just as much of a hard ass, but you could tell immediately her new TO, it's like, all right, what's her name, Vasquez? It's like, you could tell, like, she's that, and the other boot, Paulina says, like, right, she is a hard ass, but she is fair. So it's like, you definitely got that vibe from her. And I love that she's like, all right, when, like, Maddie was, like, doing, getting the shotgun ready, she's like, all right, not terrible, but next time without the attitude, I was like, ooh. And I love the whole thing of, like, right, they're responding to, like, a DV, domestic violence, and it's like, cool, you ever been in a fight before? She's like, yeah, someone said something racist about my stepdad, and so I cocked her in the face, and I was like, yeah, that's about it. So I was like, and they responded to the DV, things got handled, but it's like, yeah, you still didn't watch your 6 like I told you to. So it's like, yeah, she kind of stumbled there. So it's going to be interesting. You're going to be like, oh, like, because we never had to see this side of Harry. Like, when we got introduced to Harry, he was already, like, a veteran homicide detective. So seeing Maddie work her way up is definitely going to be really interesting. I don't know if they haven't touched on it first episode alone. Is she still dating? Once again, it's been a little while. Is she still dating the same dude from last season? Did they break up? I could have sworn at the end of the series they were still together. It's almost interesting because like her love life kind of reflects Bosch's. I mean, granted, the last relationship he was with the judge, and she ended up getting murdered, sadly. But like Maddie, like I think her relationship's kind of parallel her dad's, where it's like, oh, like things don't always work out. So we'll see. Like I said, what his name, like, I don't remember what his name was now. Wasn't it like Angelo or something like that? Like I said, I'm blanking on it because he was like a doctor. I was like, I thought they were still together by the end of the original series, but like I said, I could be mistaken. Correct me in the comments down below. Other than that, there's the whole Chandler situation, which obviously her, Maddie, and Bosch kept their eyes on the whole Carl Rogers thing, which the jury was in a deadlock, so it ended up in a mistrial, which is kind of rough. And I'm assuming Michelle's supposed to be Chandler's child, because she keeps calling her mama, and that's why I'm like, I don't... It's weird to say, but I'm like... I would assume that's her daughter. That's what I'd assume. Like, but part of me was wondering, I was like, is there... I didn't know how to read that dynamic. Because I'm like, did that ever come up before, like, any family situation? I mean, I think when we saw her, like, I mean, especially if she has a child that's, like, off living her own life. Of course, like, she's not going to be there with Honey, living in her place. But Honey's also kind of being... this is also Honey's first case back. She's working on a case with a dude named Jeffrey, which that actor seems familiar, and I just can't place what I know him from, the actor who plays Jeffrey, because a doctor gets stabbed, and I was about to say, like, how did they get to Jeffrey being the suspect? I don't think that came up in the episode, but Honey looks through the confession tape disc, because she was kind of reluctant to take this case, because she felt like she was ready, but kind of her boss was like, no, this is kind of a perfect case to jump off. The guy seems like there might be some mental illness, maybe, possibly, probably some drugs mixed into it, and he confessed, so it's like, yeah, her boss is kind of giving her quite the uphill battle. So Honey, like, represents Jeffrey, and the prosecutor's going hard in the paint, saying, like, there's no deals or anything like that. He's going to go down that, because she's representing, and I think it was her boss that was saying that, yeah, you're going to be representing the most hated man, because he killed a doctor which was loved and regarded in the community. Oh, he helped the homeless, and you're like, yeah, there's going to be skeletons in that guy's closet. You're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's like, oh, maybe he wasn't the great person that people made him out. Maybe he did some good things to hide and make up for some terrible stuff that he did. Or maybe he was a decent person, and it's just like, you never know what the motive is behind some stuff like that. So we'll see, but I'm keeping my ears and eyes open, thinking like, all right, there's probably gonna be some suspicious stuff dropped about the doctor that she ended up ended up getting killed, but we'll see. I liked Chandler manipulating Harry into reading the death. Kind of went through Maddie to do it. And because for Maddie, it's like, right, after Mom died, she was there for me, so please do it. He's like, fine, this is going to be the last time you get to pull the daughter card. And she's like, we both know that's not the case. So that was interesting, which obviously he didn't appreciate Honey using Maddie to get to him, but still. And he uses his experience to be like, yeah, that was a cooked confession. And so, because he was reluctant to testify with, Chandler, because he's like, no, I don't work with lawyers. Like, Probably some of the people Harry hates the most are lawyers. Just in general, the court system he doesn't appreciate, because it's like things could go so sideways because during court, like, your hard work, even if you did everything right, I mean, because he's actually been through it himself of being told, like, accused of planting evidence and stuff like that. Like, he's been through that ringer twice already, about how he handles things in cases. So, like, of course, that's going to blow up in his face. So, of course, he already had a sour look on the court system. It's even more so now. Once again, it is part of the due process, but it's just kind of, I think for him, it's like bad people are allowed to get away with stuff. And it's like, I think his principle of everyone counts, nobody, if everyone counts, if no one, everybody counts or no one counts, right? I think the same thing is applicable there, where it's like, right, you have to represent those who are innocent and guilty. It's just, I think Harry gets that, but it's still just like the court system just rubs him the wrong way with just the approach of everything. It's just, lawyers to him probably are some of the scummiest people. And he's like, right, it's nothing against you. Well, then he's like, well, sometimes when he's talking about Chandler. But, yeah, that was really interesting, him in a courtroom on the stand, and that detective who got the confession from Jeffrey. You saw the looks where Harry's just kind of like, all right, because you know there's going to be fallout for this. Because it's like, you are a fellow detective, for you to because Harry's also probably got the reputation of he doesn't like lawyers, so for him to do this, it's probably like, really, Harry? You're going to, like, trash the confession I got? We know what kind of legacy cop you are. Now that you're no longer a cop, you're turning against the blue. I feel like that could be potentially a subplot this season, especially with Maddie working her way up the ranks as a Boots. I feel like she's probably going to get some of that trickle down, like, some of that heat of, like, I could be wrong. Maybe it's not going to be a bigger thing, but I feel like there's ample room for that to be a bigger storyline. A cursory one that kind of continues throughout the season or something. But yeah, like, because that detective almost like, because he's kind of bothered that, like, Harry's kind of dismantling the confession he got and kind of making him look bad. Like, oh, because Harry says that basically when you're talking to a suspect, you're supposed to feel like it's supposed to be fair. It's supposed to be even killed, or you're supposed to be on the same footing. But it's like, right, you're talking down to the suspect. You're not on even playing field with him. You got your gun to intimidate them. It's like Jeffrey confessed because he just said whatever he needed to say to get out of this situation, hoping that it would end the confession sooner, because that was also something of, like, with his diagnosis, an expert was saying that, right, someone of his condition generally doesn't get violent, and says that, right, he probably confessed just so he could get out of that situation because he wants to go home. So I thought that was just kind of an interesting element to the episode in that regard. So that's obviously continuing, because even with the confession being taken out, the DA the prosecutor drops on him like, hey, we got DNA on both Chandler and Bosch. It sucks for Bosch because it's like, I literally stuck my neck out to basically shit on a cop's means of getting a confession, and the guy might be guilty in the long run because his DNA was found on a doctor. He might have stumbled across the doctor's body afterwards, and that's why his DNA's up there, maybe in his own way. Maybe he's confused and he tried to save the doctor. Maybe that's something like that. Like, once again, was the DNA... Because I think Sloan was waiting to pull... It's like, all right, do what you're going to do. I'm about to embarrass you, honey, in this regard. Bam. Oh, there's DNA evidence, because even she was blindsided by it. She was like, oh, we just got it back. I'm like, that's BS. They probably had it back for a while, and they were just waiting to kind of screw her over. I don't know. Because even Harry was like, yo, are you playing me? She's like, no. Because he was almost like, right, you're trying to get me to get some guilty guy off, because you know I don't fly with that. But she's like, no, I promise you, Harry, I'm not trying to screw you over. This just kind of landed in my lap, too. She just told me, so we'll see. But like I said, I'm going to think in the end Jeffrey didn't do it. I think... It just seems, and with the DNA evidence, I think that's the point. It's going to be a little bit of an uphill battle. And Chandler's got to not only deal with that, but also the Carl Rogers thing, like I said, of his, the charges getting dropped against him, because the DA says that the one person that could connect him between, the murders and Carl Rogers, and the hitman and Carl Rogers, recanted their testimony. So it's like, okay. So without that, they kind of have no other substantial evidence. So, rather than keep this up, the argument was probably like the DA trying to we're not going to go down the trial. We can't necessarily win because there's nothing left to really stick to them. So Honey and Bosch are going to be working together for this case. It's like, right, we handle things your way, due process and everything, the fucker still got to walk. So we're going to handle things my way. And Chandler agrees. Okay, your way, Bosch. We handle things my way. Didn't work out. Let's see how you handle it. So that's definitely going to be an interesting, like I said, all these culmination of all these different storylines this season. I'm excited to have Bosch back. I wasn't, like I said, until after I'd already watched this series finale was when I found out. So I didn't go into the final season of Bosch knowing they were going to continue it. It's like, no, it's continuing. I was really surprised when I found out there was going to be this sequel series. So that's pretty dope. So glad to have Bosch back. Glad to see how this season plays out, how these storylines play out. Excited to see, like I said, there are 3 more episodes out right now. So I'm going to try and get to those soon. We'll see if I'm able to get them out in time. But regardless, I'm excited to see where everything takes us going forward from here. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and good